Morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Contemporary Issues class. Quiet, please, class. Kids are hard to get quiet down, aren't they? There we go. Thank you. Welcome to Contemporary Issues. We have got a full room today to talk about the election coming up and the ballot questions and a couple of the candidates too. So we're going to have a lot to cover. We're going to run through this quickly, but want to welcome any first-time visitors that we have. Is anybody a first-time visitor? Just want to say hi to you. If not, okay. I thought I recognized most everybody. And we have our usual announcements. Zoomers, nice to have, looks like 8 or 10 of you on Zoom. And please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen when you're not speaking. We are recording this also for future playback on YouTube. And that is your public notice of that. And we are talking about politics today, so please be kind in your comments. This is not the place to vent your frustration against any candidate or issue in particular. We are going to go through the blue book today from the state that has pros and cons on the ballots and learn a little bit about what is coming up on November 5. Okay, with that, we've already done some announcements before we started class here, but do we have any other announcements anybody would like to share that we missed? Okay, we've already done about our class party coming up. And okay, so November 5, we have a big election coming up, and I'm going to share just probably 5 minutes of a review about candidate comments about review of candidates that are on the ballot. And I handed out a sample Douglas County ballot. If you are not in Douglas County, on your county election office website, there is a sample ballot, most likely. You can see exactly what will arrive in your mailed ballot when you get it. And for presidential electors, as we know, I just want to mention a couple things about presidential electors, candidates. I'm going to hit share screen here so I can share a little bit in case you haven't looked up anything for the major candidates, the Republican and Democrat candidates. I want to just show you a little bit about what is the top of their priorities. This is the Trump website. He says his 20 core promises to make America great again. Number 1, seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Number 2, carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. End inflation and make America affordable again. Make America the dominant energy producer in the world. Stop outsourcing and turn the United States into a manufacturing superpower. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Defend our Constitution, Bill of Rights, fundamental freedoms, freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. Prevent World War III. Restore peace in Europe and in the Middle East and build a great Iron Dome missile defense over our entire country. That's the first I've heard of that one. Iron Dome missile defense over our entire country. All made in America. I thought he was talking about Israel, but he's talking about America. Number 9, end the weaponization of the government against the American people. And number 10, stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish drug cartels, and crush gang violence and lock up violent offenders. Okay, I'm not going to go through the other 10, but a lot of us probably hadn't looked those up on his website and quite informative. So if you want more, find out about his top priorities, that is where he's at. Okay, then let me just show you Kamala Harris's website, and then we will move on. Kamala Harris says, whoop, let me back up a little bit. A new way forward. She says that she and Governor Walz are fighting for a new way forward to protect our fundamental freedoms, strengthen democracy, and build on an opportunity economy and lower cost for families. She grew up in a middle class home and she tells that every chance she gets. Vice President made clear she's building up the middle class. And to read her full information, you can go on there. Other top priorities: cut taxes for middle class families, make rent more affordable, grow small businesses, take on bad actors, strengthen and bring down cost of health care, and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. Okay, so I just wanted to share that with you for a moment. Also on the ballot, of course, depending on your particular ballot, there will be the congressional representatives, your state representatives, state offices such as district attorney, county commissions, city things. Each town has ballot questions and some school district questions. So we obviously don't have time to go through all those. I recommend you look at the websites for each of those that you're interested in, and maybe can find, just like these two major candidates, that your local candidates have their priorities on there also. I do want to mention that there's judges up, of course, on statewide also for appeals courts and others. And the blue book says that every one of the judges that are up for election meet the performance standards of the commission that reviews those. There's not a single judge that this time did not meet the standards and are recommended to be rejected. So our attorney, class member here, Jeff Klaus, recommends follow that and just check everyone as retain those judges. Okay, with that, we have about 40 minutes left, and Ron is going to fly through these
Okay, let's bring up the PowerPoint.
these ballot issues, which are just amazingly diverse this year.
I want to say this, as I studied these ballot issues, I'm more and more convinced that people that run for office really need to be smart and informed and well educated. Sometimes we get candidates that say, I worked on a swamp cleanup campaign and I think I'd make a good congressman, something like that. But as you look at some of these issues, a lot of them do require some darn good research, thinking, and good intelligence. And it is important for public officials to be smart, well-educated, not just charismatic. Smart is better than charismatic, at least in terms of making the right decisions. We won't try to tell you exactly how to vote. We'll say some of the pros and cons. Some of these are pretty tough. I have opinions on many of them. There's some of them I'm still struggling as to which the right answer is. So with that, let's get going. I always loved that cartoon, Ballot Box Bunny, where Bugs and Yosemite Sam are running for office. Next one. This next slide shows the turnout in the 2020 presidential election in terms of percentages. Those numbers are probably too small for you to read, but Colorado was darn near right at the top. In 2020, they had, for presidential election nationwide, 66.7% of eligible voters turned out. That was the highest percentage in over 100 years. And that's why there were higher totals for both Biden and Trump than ever before. There were simply far more people voting, more people energized, more people interested. But Colorado came in, beat the national average by more than 10 points. That number there, 76.4 for Colorado. Minnesota, I think, was the highest with an 80.0. But congratulations to those states that get the good turnouts. Iowa, Minnesota, up there in Washington, Oregon. Looks like Virginia does a good job. So that's intriguing. Next one. Okay, let's get right into the amendment. Amendment G, modified property tax exemption for veterans with disabilities. This will take some of the veterans disabled to a certain degree that are unable to hold a steady job. This doesn't mean they have to be permanently disabled, 100%, but a certain percentage. And they would get eligibility to sign up for the property tax exemption. I don't think that means you'd pay no property tax. It just gets you in, I think, to the senior exemption that many of us have. But there's a shot out of the movie Born on the 4th of July. Tom Cruise. Next slide. Go the other way. Yeah. All right. Amendment H, judicial discipline procedures and confidentiality. Again, this is a statewide issue. Create an independent advocative board to preside over ethical misconduct hearings involving judges. We don't need ethics in judges, do we? Or even Supreme Court. Nah, we don't need ethics. Interestingly enough, at the Colorado legislature, I think it was around the year 2000, the Colorado legislature looked at its ethics principles in place and found they were very, very lax. They had almost nothing in regards to discrimination, sexual discrimination and harassment, and a lot of other ethical weak points. And the Colorado legislature did work at that time to try to at least make things a bit better. I'm not saying it's perfect, but they made quite a few improvements about 20 years ago. But my personal preference is on this one, yes.
JD Hog.
How many ever watched Dukes of Hazzard? Oh, just a few, yeah. Yeah.
So the idea here, Ron, is that judges shouldn't be in charge of evaluating other judges.
There should be an independent board. They shouldn't be asking them to internally police themselves in small groups is open for problems. Next.
They say if there's a fiscal component, like how much is it gonna cost and how many of these independent people? Is this gonna be volunteer? Are we gonna pay 20 people to get together? That kind of thing.
I don't know. I'd have to research it, but I don't think it's much. I don't think, I think it's a very, very low.
Don't they usually say if there's a fiscal
Yeah.
component?
Yeah.
There's not on this
So it
particular
wouldn't,
one.
if it were minuscule.
I think it's minuscule at best. Okay, next. All right. Amendment I, constitutional bail exemption for first degree murder. Restore the ability of judges to deny bail to people charged with first degree murder when certain criteria are met. That's a picture of El Chapo, the Mexican drug lord that was captured somewhere and brought back to this country. I think most of us folks feel that, yeah, the judge should be able to deny bail. You could have the rare case where somebody gets arrested that's like a drug lord, where they've got more money in their suitcase than you could possibly set for bail. And you don't want them to be able to cough up a $5 million bail out of a suitcase and flee the country. You do want the ability to stop putting people out on bail, and really, there's no way they should be out on bail. All right. Any comments on that one? Okay,
How
next
does
one.
that conflict with habeas corpus?
I don't know. You explain it.
I don't know. And habeas corpus said, what was a common law thing back to, English law, and, it said that until you are properly convicted, that you should not be imprisoned. So,
That's the argument against in the blue book.
Okay.
Everybody's considered innocent until proven guilty. And this goes against that concept.
I think they would have to really determine how they hold that person back. You know, I mean, what's the criteria?
Let my. Okay,
But it does also mention that there is judges have to apply a high standard of proof before they can deny bail. So it's not as though they just have complete decision-making ability. They have to follow certain standards to deny bail in this case.
Okay. Okay, next one. Amendment J, repealing the constitutional definition of marriage. In Colorado right now, the Constitution states that it's one man and one woman, and that's it. Okay? And obviously, we have plenty of examples in this church even of marriages that are not within that definition. That's a picture of Mayor Pete and his husband or his male partner, and they've adopted 2 children, by the way. But we're in a new world today, and this is cleaning up the Constitution to give it a more, shall we say, progressive interpretation. Any comments on this one? Okay.
The Blue Book says also that argument 4 includes that this would codify what's already been decided by state and federal courts. It also protects from the U.S. Supreme Court overturning previous rulings, making Colorado's Constitution better by including this. The argument against is marriage should remain a union between a man and a woman, and that should be preserved in the Colorado Constitution in that way. Has no fiscal impact on the state.
Okay, next one. There's, whoops. No, okay. Amendment K, modify constitutional election deadlines. Right now, of course, you can collect signatures to put things on a ballot. There's a couple different ways to get an initiative or a amendment on the ballot. I'm not an expert on it. But this adjusts the deadlines a little bit to give more time to the authorities to examine the petitions, get the thing published in newspapers and publish it. I think even this year, it was kind of a crush at the last minute, a lot of issues coming in, and the authorities had difficulties getting it all handled and adjusted in the time available. This is hardly a major change. I mean, 1 week is not a terribly big deal. So, okay, next one. Okay, a real hot potato. We've got a picture here in the upper right corner of the instant a sperm is penetrating the wall of an egg, an ovum, and the minute of fertilization. There's also some pictures of embryo development there. If you want to know how far along things are at different phases. And you can see it's a slippery slope. It's hard to say when is life there. Well, the cell is alive the instant the egg is fertilized. The cells are alive in an ovum. The cell is alive in a sperm. But of course, the big theological and political question is, when is a human life in place such that you don't want to allow abortion? Yeah, but we can see some of the pictures. I think most of us would say it's hard to make a strong argument for a 16-cell blob and say that's a human life, although many do. But we can see where the fetus is at different points of development. The fetus there at 4 weeks looks, like it could turn into anything, a squirrel or a lizard or anything. And we can start seeing by 10 weeks, we're starting to see more formation. There is an 8-week picture. Of course, in a theological perspective, many theologians try to ask the question, when is there ensoulment, impartation of a divine spirit, shall we say? And that's a tough one to answer. It's a real tough one to answer.
Well, I have to,
Go ahead.
I need to speak up on this one.
I think that,
Speak louder, please.
I think we need to look at it from the standpoint that, do you want the government to tell a woman what they can and cannot do? Whether or not it's a moral issue. I mean, that's,
I agree.
but looking at it from the standpoint, do you want the government telling a woman what they can do?
And Ron, I
Yeah.
also think that you can have two women in a room. And under the circumstances, one would tell you that that it's because of their circumstances, they would say, yes, that's a life and termination is possible, termination is absolutely impossible because of a woman's situation and her life that she's in.
So there's that too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's also the moral dilemma of what do you do if there are horrific deformities?
Right.
Such that the child is almost as good as dead the minute they're born.
And that would be.
And it tears your heart out even trying to handle those issues, so it's a tough one. Okay. Go ahead,
Also,
Frank.
another issue is, should public tax dollars be paid for, abortion, be used for, paid for abortion? That's, buried in this bill.
Okay. Okay,
A very brief summary of arguments for and against. The argument for is that this would protect abortion access in Colorado and make it protected regardless of changing political climates and put the individual in charge of their own healthcare decisions. The argument against is that this amendment is extremely broad and could prevent Colorado from passing statutes in the future to restrict abortion in any way. Also, many Coloradoans don't want their funds, taxpayer funds, to be used for abortions, and this would allow that over their objections.
So health insurance wouldn't come into this? A person's health insurance, if it's acceptable in Colorado, I guess that's something to be debated.
Wasn't that the whole thing of Hobby Lobby or one of those that
I don't
they
know.
didn't want to pay for
That
their
was.
health insurance?
I think so, yeah.
Wasn't paid for that.
now we,
And in birth control was another
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anybody know if any other states have a constitutional right to abortion? Any of the 50 states? Are we the only one?
I thought several had it on their ballot.
Do
at the
they?
Time.
At this
After
point,
R.B. Wade was overturned, this
some
is
did.
one vehicle that's being used. I think there's several that. have it on.
There's been Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, many other states have had abortion level issues put before the voters in the last 2 years. Okay. All right, next one. Amendment 80, constitutional right to school choice. And I have to show my prejudice here. I've got a lot of teachers as friends. And I did hear a teacher talk about this one. And she felt strongly that it was diverting money from public schools to private schools, private religious schools, home schools, open enrollment, and she pointed out the words that scared her the most. School choice to include future innovations in education. She was saying that's about as vague and as all encompassing. And she is specifically concerned about people starting a homeschool with their kids and a few others in the neighborhood, and then asking for money. And talking about, here's a way to make some good money on the side. Now, they don't have that yet, but that's an issue. You can see where somebody, decides to make a homeschool for profit. So I'll just take that money.
Is that included?
That's not included in the bill, but the bill is open for court interpretation that could lead to that. So many teachers are afraid of this one.
Well, there are several of these that we're gonna talk about later that are funded by dark money, and this is one of them.
Okay,
This money from
okay,
either out of state or people in our own state.
okay.
That's a green dot.
Yes.
That you don't know where it's coming from. And,
Somebody has to send it.
with Citizens United, there's opportunity to not, divulge the source.
Okay,
So if you have the money, then you can do with it what you want anyway.
Right. But you don't have to divulge what you're spending it on. You don't have to divulge what you're spending it on.
My brain is probably not smart enough to understand.
okay. Yeah,
I've got a quick question if I could. Actually, we do have school choice now. If somebody wants to send their child to a private school, you can't.
Yeah.
You just can't get money back from your tax money that you've already paid to the public school. You can't get it back to use for a private school. Is that correct?
Well,
Colleen is a principal,
yeah, and
So-
when,
and
I
this
just-
would change that. You would get your tax money back to use as you wish.
I think that's the right thing to do. I
Okay.
mean, when you have parents coming in and sharing their points of view, you need to make sure that their children have the best education as well. I mean, oh, wow.
Yeah.
This could open up a lot.
Do you think this would encourage more people to take their kids to private schools? Because they would get the money now for it?
Yes, I do.
Uh-huh.
And they, actually, but that should be their right.
Mhm.
I mean, you have to look at it so that all the parents, all the children of all these parents have what their parents want for them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, we're pretty much, I mean, we have school choice, but most of the parents want to take their kids to public education because of these factors.
Mhm.
So they should be having that money to take them, I believe.
Yeah, they say this is America.
So I
We should be free to.
Your teacher.
voucher.
On the other hand, if you don't believe in stoplights, you should be able to should you be able to take your tax money back for that, or should that go to the public good? So just another argument.
Huh? Good one. Thank you, Susan. Yeah.
And also, Steve, there's that argument, if you've never had children and this comes up, I mean, they're entitled to that money back as much as somebody who put their kids in a different school.
Oh,
I mean, really,
okay.
because I've known people that are in that situation.
I don't have kids in public
I don't
school. I
have
shouldn't
kids
have to pay for it.
$1,000 in my tax.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, maybe we need to focus on, do we support public education or not?
That's really the, yeah, that's the question. Yeah.
Yes.
That's the question.
Okay.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that people get like cash in hand. Doesn't it just go to the?
It's like a
Voucher.
Right, it's like, it goes to the institution. They can't just buy a new car. or whatever.
And it's
Yeah.
so much per child too,
Right.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
think,
so it's probably not gonna cover going to Ballott. You know, I mean, it's not gonna be that same kind of money. It would just help.
well, if you look at the 14th Amendment, you have equal educational opportunity. And so you have to provide that to all the children.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
we could probably, let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay. Proposition JJ, retain additional sports betting revenue. Allow the state to keep sports betting revenue above the amount that I guess Tabor would limit you to. So, and use this money for water products. So it's a specific thing.
So is that a good, is this a good or not? I mean,
Is this a good one?
Yeah.
Retain. Yeah, it says allow the state to at least keep that money to put into public service instead of refunding it.
Okay.
Or,
What did they do with it
Yeah.
before?
once it hit a certain limit, I think the casinos quit,
They got money back.
they got rebated.
A previous proposition said that at $29 million, the state could collect up to $29 million in revenue from betting. And above that, they had to rebate it back to the casinos, but this would make it, above 29 million. The state keeps it and uses it for water projects.
Okay.
You know what the percentage of the population does to sports betting? Do they have any?
Of course, in the sports betting online, you know, they talk about that all the time. Is that the same kind of betting that they're? Is it local betting, like, just here in the casinos, or is it local betting, I mean, statewide with all these advertisements for betting on?
Is it electronic? I would assume the electronic is also, I don't know, I have to dig into
A
it.
different one.
Okay. All right, let's roll to the next one. Proposition KK. That's not KKK, that's KK. Firearms and ammunition excise tax. Create a new state tax on firearms equal to 6.5%. It applies to firearms, firearm parts, ammunition, and exempts this money from the state's revenue limit. Again, it doesn't go towards that final total that Tabor limits us to. It just says flat out, buy as much ammo as you want, but you're gonna pay the tax, and the tax is gonna go to the state. And I think the money is directed, use the money to fund crime victim support services, mental health services, school safety programs, other things to counteract the damage done by firearms. Of course, they don't do any harm, do they?
So is there a tax on these now? Or nothing?
I believe there is. Yeah, I think if you go buy a gun, there's a tax on it. It just says,
Additional tax.
yeah, we're not gonna rebate it, put a limit on it.
Okay.
No Tabor refunding of excess money coming in on this.
Does this have the potential to say that you no longer have the right to bear arms because the taxation could be so high that you never could afford to buy a rifle or pistol or whatever it would be?
It says 6.5%.
6.5% now, but what happens if they put in there, it'd be 106%.
I think you're using the slippery slope fallacy of
They would
argument.
have
saying,
to pass
Yeah.
another
Yeah,
ballot.
yeah. Next thing you know, this will turn into banning firearms, right?
Well, like other sin taxes, should we keep raising taxes on alcohol, cigarettes,
Yeah.
guns? What's a fair place to put tax increases?
Okay. Next one, Proposition 127. Prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. Heavens to Murgatroyd. Does anybody remember that?
Yeah.
Snagglepuss. Yeah, that's a bobcat. I do want to make a comment. It looks like when we passed the rule on reintroducing wolves, it looks like maybe that wasn't the best idea. The wolves are turning out to be worse for farming and predatory thing than we thought. But I don't know if you can apply that argument. We already have and have had bobcats, cougars, lynx in our population in Colorado. And I haven't heard of complaints about the big pussycats going after farm animals, more or less. An occasional thing, but generally they're not tearing into chicken coops and killing cows and calves. So I think it's a separate thing.
Are they endangered?
Are they endangered right now? No. I think it's largely people like me that just love cats. And I don't like the idea of people with guns blasting them away and hanging them on walls. I'll be honest.
Sometimes in my backyard.
Yeah, we have. Which one?
Yeah.
I didn't know that,
I live right on the canal.
I didn't know that wolves were decimating,
Livestock.
livestock that greatly, they are compensated when there is a wolf a wolf pack that is taken account. I didn't know that this was. I mean, I know the farmers are not happy about it, it's a cow, but.
And
the farmers,
think-
they have their animals on public land. That's not their land, that's public land where they have their animals, and then when a poor, wolf comes, and wolves don't eat they eat once a month. They don't eat like they say, oh, 1 cow a day, no, they don't.
Okay.
And that problem was a big problem in Washington State.
Yeah.
They got them all killed with helicopters even because they couldn't find them.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so it is separate, because we did reintroduce wolves, whereas we're not reintroducing cougars, bobcats and lynx. So,
The argument for here is that hunting and trapping these animals is often for trophies or commercial fur trade. The argument against it is that Colorado wildlife experts are already managing this population of bobcats and mountain lions well. And that if you allow regulated hunting, but it's managed by the Colorado officials and has been for a long time, and they want the ability to continue to regulate the population as they see fit.
So there should be a no then.
That's what I'm gonna.
actually, I don't want to inject. I don't want to inject my personal political viewpoint, but I will say, in front of me is the position of the Colorado Democratic Party. Here,
What are they saying?
and their position, there's 3 issues that they take no stand on, and this is one of them. So make up your own mind, this and the veterinarian one and the Proposition 130, which we'll get to later.
Does it mean that the wildlife committee cannot kill a bobcat? They can, the wildlife people. That's what it means.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah,
Yes.
it doesn't stop all hunting of cougars, like if there's a dangerous one that's
Yeah.
hanging around in elementary school or something, they can stop it, but
That it stops the state from being able to make their own decisions on population control.
you stop inviting out-of-state people to come in and hunt them.
Yeah, Ron, I would just correct one thing that was mentioned earlier. Cougars and bobcats do kill commercial or,
Kill cows?
cows.
Okay.
I had a
Oh,
goat
okay,
killed by a mountain lion.
Okay.
For example,
okay,
back in one of our back
But it's,
camps.
yeah, every once in a while, but they
Yeah.
destroying a bloody bird.
No, there's way too many deer, so they prefer the deer.
yeah, they like venison, that's their main.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Proposition 128, parole eligibility for crimes of violence. Increase the amount of prison time a person convicted of certain crime must serve before becoming eligible for discretionary parole or earned time reduction. This, by the way, is covered in today's Denver Post. I didn't get to read it in detail this morning, but there are 2 sides to this. Generally, most people, when given a sentence of like 15 years, serve maybe 45% of it or something on the average. They tend to credit people as they're in jail with good behavior. If they, do good things and don't spit, drink and chew and, do bad things, they're typically given some merit credit and released earlier than they might if they turn into an angry, grumpy, fight-starting
But
prisoner.
shouldn't the prison officials have that ability to make that decision? Should they be required to hold people longer if it's not in their best judgment?
There's a parole board that they come up against.
Mhm. Yeah, actually, the Democratic party says, vote no on this, it's a costly one size fits all parole.
Okay,
So,
so it sounds good on the surface, but it takes away the ability of the prison officials to use their own judgment as to who should get out earlier and who should stay longer.
And also you can behave very well when you're in prison, as soon as you're out, your own self.
That's true too.
again, let's all read this morning's paper. How many get the Denver Post? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, there's quite a bit of material this morning on this issue
Okay.
and some other ones. Okay. Next one. Snagglepuss might get impacted by this one too. Proposition 129, establishing vet professional associates. Just like we've seen physicians assistants
Yeah.
come on strongly in the last 2 decades in healthcare organizations. This proposal would allow more non-formally degreed certified vets do more things with pets. The argument for it, one of them is that there seems to be a shortage of talented vets right now. You need to take your dog in for a rather complex surgery. The wait's too long and prices. There's a lot of people that have, their poor German shepherds about all they've got. And expensive veterinary procedures are keeping them from even getting adequate care for their pets in many cases. So,
Would it be similar to PAs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The argument,
Physician assistants that doctors have, that they can do a certain number of things
Mhm.
on their own and prescribe medication and whatnot. Isn't this sort of the same deal for animals?
If it's done the same way that PAs are done, though, it does not lower cost.
okay.
okay. The argument against here is that it says the measure's education requirements are vague and it does not differentiate them from other veterinary care professionals. There's currently no academic programs for this profession in Colorado. So it's unclear who would be eligible to work as a veterinary professional associate. So they have to figure out this whole education part of doing this.
You have to create the problem and then solve it.
My grandfather in Ohio castrated hogs to earn money on the side. Rumor had it made women dating his daughters more nervous. Oh, well.
What a memory.
Okay. All right. Next one up, Proposition 130, funding for law enforcement. Direct the state to spend $350 million to help recruit, train, and retain local law enforcement officers. I want to make a comment here. I read it in the paper. That makes it true, right? But they say right now we're struggling. Their Tabor limits our Colorado budget. We only have so much budget. And as we pass laws saying you must put so much funding into whatever it is, schools, law enforcement, child abuse prevention. When you lock in the amount of funding you must put in, it usually means the legislature with that limited budget has to maybe take something else.
That's somewhere else.
Yeah, yeah. And that comes into play in a plethora of these issues. So it's not an easy decision. I don't think any of us would not say, well, would it help to have more money for law enforcement? Heck, yes. In fact, if you read the problems they're having right now, recruiting, retaining, and training law enforcement, it's getting much, much tougher. It's a tough career. You got to put your life on the line. The pay is good, but it's not great. And let's face it, in a lot of law enforcement roles, you don't meet the best of people. Yeah.
What does the Democrat Party recommend on this?
They actually have no position on this one. Or 130, yeah.
What's the no against it? The con on this one?
It says the against is no evidence exists that increased funding to law enforcement has made communities safer.
I think the argument in this morning's paper basically said many felt that the money shouldn't be specifically directed to law enforcement, but should be able to be sent to fire departments, schools, mental health, a whole plethora of other areas to try to fight the problem. So,
And cities still have the ability to raise officer pay on their own if they want to.
Okay.
They just wouldn't have this additional state funding.
They just need to go back for recurrent training.
okay.
I heard on the news, nationwide, violence crime has.
Yeah.
But they don't say why.
Yeah.
Is it because nationwide we're increasing our law enforcement funds? Or is it because of the paper reason?
Yeah. It's always been a tough issue. All righty. Proposition 131, establishing all candidate primary and ranked choice voting for general elections. Our wizard on that is sitting right on the back corner of the room.
I'm totally biased on this issue, and so my disclaimer is I advocate for approval voting, which is different than ranked choice voting. But well, on this issue, three things bother me. One, Camp Theory, who is funding this, is a multimillionaire who I just am suspicious has ambitions of being governor and is changing the rules so that he can manipulate himself into office. Second, I find the first half of this, where the top four will go forward. The top four could be all Democrats, it could be all Republicans, it could be all whatever crazies. And then in the general election, you would have to be choosing among those four. Yes, I am an approval voting party chair, a minor party chair, and want minor parties to be able to participate in the general election, as is evidenced here by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 presidential candidates being on the ballot, and only 2 are major parties. So that's my disclaimer. I'm eager. This sounds good. I find it suspicious. Okay, I'll go back to sleep.
So basically what it would do would be do away with the Republican Democrat primaries and just have one primary where anybody could, 100 people could run if they want to and be on the ballot without a party affiliation. And the top four vote getters would then advance to the general election. And then the top vote getter in the general election would win that seat. I believe that's correct.
I
Is
think
that right?
California does that. California does that choice rank voting.
Okay,
Like the Denver mayor.
yeah. The argument for is that this gives all voters an equal opportunity to vote in the primaries. You don't have to be either a Republican or Democrat. The argument against is that this is more complex and expensive. Voters will have to vote in 2 different systems for each election and may receive multiple ballots. They will, it's also expected to be confusing to people filling out their ballot, which could change the election winners, and the complexity of counting ranked results could lead to questions about whether the results are fair and accurate. So it's concerns about it being too complex, not understood. And so people could say, there's fraud in this, it wasn't done right. and we don't understand it. So there's lots of questions, concerns from that angle.
Let's say one
Susan.
thing, Steve. And I don't know anymore. I used to be very active in the League of Women Voters, and I'm not anymore. But they have been for some form of ranked choice voting for many years. And it would be interesting, I'll do it, but I don't know if anybody else is interested. They usually put out some kind of a booklet that talks about, they don't necessarily take a position. They never take a position on candidates, but they do on certain issues. It might be interesting to see what they have to say, because there are lots of different formulas that can be put together, not just this one. And it, you know, and I'd just be curious to see what they have to say.
Yeah, lots of different, there's approval voting and ranked choice voting and
Right.
lots of theories on how we could change. And you have to evaluate that. Ron, what does the Democratic Party recommend?
The Democratic Party actually recommends a no on this one.
Oh,
So wealthy donors should not influence Colorado election. That's their one
oh, okay.
sentence recommendation on it. One of the things many people are trying to do is figure out a way to stop more demagogic type politicians from winning, particularly in a state where you get a state that's totally unbalanced in terms of its political affiliation. Let's call it the Liberty Party, and they get maybe 75% of the vote. And the Liberty Party runs. Well, here's something that happened when I first moved to Colorado. The Republican Party had dominance in this area for sure, and they ran 4 different Republican candidates for a state representative job. And the winner got just 27% of the vote, but won the Republican primary with 27% of the vote. And then went on to win the election with because that district that I was in was so dominant, Republican, everybody just rubber stamped, and the extremists won despite having won their primary by only 27%. So some feel that there need to be forces put in place to prevent very extremists that are unacceptable to the majority from winning so easily. So,
okay. The fiscal impact of this is that in the first year, it would cost the state $100,000 to implement. After that, it would cost about $6 million a year in future years, making software updates, redesigning ballots, and other necessities.
okay. Again, these discussions remind me again of the importance when we elect people for office at any level. They complain about people that are elites, but smart is good. Yeah, smart is good. Just like honesty is good.
Yeah.
Honesty and intelligence are incredibly important. And character at any level. So, yeah.
We've got about 3 minutes left. Ron, is that the last one?
Yeah.
That was the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. General discussion. What do you think? Any of these jump out at you that you're really passionate about?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You woke him up.
I'll come back to say.
Save the mountain lions.
Snagglepuss. I love Snagglepuss.
I think one of the really interesting ones is the school choice.
Yeah.
What will be the impact of that if it passes? Will there be a lot of money pulled out of the public schools? And what will happen? It'll be,
They never have enough right now.
they don't have
They're
enough
already
now,
struggling.
but freedom of choice, shouldn't you? Why should you be required to pay, if you want to send your child to a private school, why should you be required to pay public and private tuition? The public good.
That is your choice.
That is your choice. Public good. For the public good, Bob says, for the public good. Because we help fund everybody.
And you know, when we moved to Colorado, one of our highest requirements was finding a district that had good schools.
Good public schools.
We ended up in Littleton.
Christine,
Then I wouldn't want my public, my taxes to go to supporting religious schools necessarily. You know, that's fine if that's their choice to go to religious schools, but I don't think that we as the general public should be financing that,
I agree.
regardless of the religion.
good point. Zoomers, I want to give you a chance before we go. Any thoughts, any questions? Any of these particular ballots anger you or please you greatly?
I
Okay,
would just say if you do have questions, this is Linda. I would just say if you do have questions, read the actual wording of the ballot proposal, because some of them are not properly conveyed just by having a summary.
okay, Linda, thank you. Appreciate that. But Linda, do you think the Blue Book does a pretty good job of summarizing accurately these things?
Well, the Blue Book has the actual wording in it, and I would say if you don't like the summary, look at the words of it and see what you feel after you've thoroughly investigated it.
Okay.
And the
Yeah, you do.
League of Women's Voters does have a website if you're wanting for.
Oh.
What's that, Mary?
Vote 411 is their website.
League of Women Voters. Okay. Has this been helpful, Lola? Good.
Last thing that
Okay,
I don't think we mentioned, and this is just regarding the parole eligibility,
okay,
crimes of violence. And part under the yes was, it would make a person convicted of a third or subsequent crime of violence ineligible for earned time or discretionary parole. I just didn't want to overlook that.
3 strikes and you're out. Got it.
okay. Very good. Okay, thank you everyone for coming today.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, thank you, Susan.